We are now in the 10th anniversary of the Darfur conflict. After 10 years, given the fact that you were perhaps one of the first people to sound the alarm about what was happening there, after 10 years, what do you think has been achieved so far by this conflict?
I think 10 years after the start of the Darfur crisis, my overwhelming feeling is that the people of Darfur have been comprehensively betrayed over the past decade.
Mm-hmm.
Their suffering, their tragedy has continued. While the rest of the world thinks that the crisis is over, it has actually got worse. 2 million people are still displaced. 200,000 to 300,000 are still refugees. And the land is cleansed of the original inhabitants that were there. Not only that, the legacy of Darfur over the past 10 years is that what went on there has now magnified into and expanded into the Nuba Mountains and in the Blue Nile state. So, in a way, failure to deal with Darfur properly over the last 10 years has meant that the ethnic cleansing, the genocidal acts have actually got worse and expanded all into other parts of Sudan.
All right. Now, there have been a plethora of peace talks between the armed groups in Darfur and the government. And we've seen some armed groups signing these deals and becoming part of the government and then leaving the government. What have these peace processes achieved so far, in your estimation?
Well, these so-called peace processes have basically been a clever ploy by the Khartoum regime of the indicted criminal al-Bashir to divide the opposition. In essence, what has happened is that by the divide and rule approach, an apparent attempt has been made to make peace, but there cannot be any substance to these talks or any real commitment to making peace while there is injustice and lack of accountability. You cannot make peace with an indicted war criminal who's wanted by the justice system, international justice system, for war crimes and genocide.
Now, looking at the role of the international community with regard to what's happening in Darfur now, what's your take of the perception that the international community is projecting about Darfur?
Well, I think there has been a very successful PR attempt by the Sudan government and its apologists, friends, to convey that the situation is normalizing in Darfur. That is not the case. When we talk to the refugees and we get the stories of those who continue to be bombed, raped and displaced inside Darfur, we realize the same things have been going on. In fact, if anything, because over the 10 years that have passed, the technology of war has got even more sophisticated. The Khartoum regime has become cleverer in oppressing the people of Darfur. So, in a way, it is really very important to convey to the world that the agony and pain of Darfur continues and has not abated over the past decade.
Now, of late, we're still getting stories about, rapes, killings, and the entrance into the Darfur war theater of elements from other countries. Reportedly, the insurgents from Mali are now in Darfur. What would you say about this?
Well, I would not be surprised if the failure to stabilize Darfur on the basis of justice and accountability and fairness leads to wider instability. Sudan is an important country at the heart of Africa, and the failure to deal with the grievances of the people there undoubtedly, results in instability in the region more widely. And obviously, those who are committing human rights atrocities in other countries like Mali may come to Sudan for seeking refuge or joining the common cause with an evil regime. So I'm not surprised about the stories of of groups from other countries coming to Sudan to find a safe haven and to continue to oppress and join hands to continue to commit their ethnic acts in Darfur and elsewhere in Sudan.
Looking at the role of the other actors in the Darfur conflict, and specifically here, we're talking about the rebel groups. What, if any, is their contribution to the current crisis in Darfur and the inability to reach a peace deal, in your estimation?
Sorry, you mean the different opposition groups?
Yes, especially the armed groups in Darfur. What is?
Okay. Well, I think when the Bashir regime and the Sudanese army has conducted so many atrocities on people, on ordinary civilians, like rape, mass murder, and displacement, and burning of homes and fields, and so on. I'm not surprised if the opposition groups, armed or unarmed, are unwilling to do a deal with Khartoum. You can't expect people to forget what has been happening, to forget the blood that has been spilled of their loved ones in the past decade, and simply make peace. So, in my view, the opposition, armed and otherwise, has to continue, because only by getting rid of this genocidal perpetrator and all those around him will we have real peace and security. So I think elsewhere in the world we have learned, whether it was in Hitler's Germany or in Cambodia in the Pol Pot time, or in other atrocities, for example in Sierra Leone, and many conflicts in the African continent itself, that when those who commit such grave acts of atrocities cannot be got rid of through peaceful means, then armed opposition is perfectly justified. So we think that on the 10th anniversary of Darfur, on 10th anniversary of Darfur, all means necessary must be found, armed or unarmed, to ensure that this dictator and his henchmen don't serve another 10 years in power.
Mm-hmm. No, but we are seeing efforts to, at peace talks, we're seeing people talking in Doha, the armed groups and the Sudan government, and there's a push from other quarters, notably the Arab League. In these so-called, if we may call them that, peace processes. Do you see anything positive coming out of these talks, really?
No, I think the problem with the Doha talks has been that they're not inclusive and that they're not impartial. If, for example, the Doha talks are simply an alibi, a proxy for the Khartoum regime and its nefarious backers, then and it only brings to the table selected agents of the opposition who are, of course, in bed with the government in Khartoum anyway, then it is not surprising that those talks are not going to lead anywhere at all. It is only when we have an independent, impartial, inclusive peace process that we are going to see progress. And in any case, that peace process must have at the heart of it justice and accountability. And this means that you cannot have peace talks, you cannot make a settlement with a man who's an indicted criminal and is wanted by the International Criminal Court. So I see the future as only pointing towards some progress and political settlement once, and if only, the genocidal indicted criminals, including the president himself, his defense minister, and Abdul Haroun, and all those people, they are removed from power. Without that happening, any agreements, any talks are not worth the words expended or the pieces of paper signed.
Mm-hmm. Lastly, before I let you go, if you had a message on the 10th anniversary of the Darfur conflict to the international community, what would that message be?
I would say to the international community that the people of Darfur are to be saluted for their courage in standing up to to the perpetrator of these human rights atrocities, the first genocide of the 21st century. I think the world and the international community should recognize that courage and understand the suffering of those people. And the international community must understand that as long as there is no fundamental solution to the grievances of the people, the conflict will continue. And the message, and I think this is a more important message, to the people of Darfur, wherever they are, in the country and outside and abroad in distant countries, is please don't give up. Your struggle is our struggle. What happens in Darfur and how the Darfur crisis ends is how Sudan is itself going to be the future. Because without Darfur, we cannot solve the problems in the Nuba Mountains, we cannot solve the issues in Blue Nile, and without that, we cannot have a Sudan that is fit to join the 21st century in a way where the nation can take its proper place in international society.
Dr. Kapila, thank you very much for taking the time to speak to us at the Sudan Radio Service. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.